Okay, welcome to our presentation about the Eclipse IDE. Yesterday we already had some discussions about the Eclipse RCP ecosystem, about the IDE. That was really great to see. Also, we had a buff session with many attendees, so it's really great to see all the community involved, all the people being active and discussing these things. But to be honest, we all know that we lost some attraction for the Eclipse IDE, for the ecosystem across the last years. For different reasons, because there were competitors to the Eclipse IDE coming up, because of missing progress to some degrees in the Eclipse IDE as well. But there were also some changes, in particular during the last 1 or 2 years, driven also by the Eclipse IDE Working Group. And that's why we started to make a talk about this and go to Java conferences, go to developer conferences throughout the past year to share insights and to also share our personal insights in being involved into this, making contributions, and why we found that this is a real chance for every Java developer and for every company that uses Java. So why are we doing this? We're from Vector Informatik. I'm Heiko, working as a software engineer. We have some Eclipse RCP-based products, and I'm one of the responsibles for the platform and for further developing the platform for our product. So we have some experiences, of course, with the platform, with the IDE, and that's want to share it with the community. And usually I do this talk with Johannes, who's my manager. Johannes can't make it today, but I've brought Max.
Yeah, so I'm also a manager working on RCP-based product and basically directly on top of Eclipse, all the fancy stuff that happens in our product, which you can't see and touch, but it's in there in the client and the server.
All right, so I would like to start with a question to all of you, because I would like to know who of you is currently actively, not necessarily on a daily basis, but in general still using the Eclipse IDE. Okay, that's cool, that's most of you, because if I ask at Java conferences, usually only a few people come up. It was even more when I was in Stuttgart. There are some more people still using Eclipse, but of course many are also using IntelliJ, web-based solutions, and so on. Now I have another question, let's say a rather provocative question. So who of you sometimes at least dislikes using Eclipse, feels some pain with some things? Okay, also quite a few, I think it's half or a third of you. And so I think that every one of you has something in mind when thinking about the Eclipse IDE that you dislike, like it's also for other tools, but maybe there are some specific things to Eclipse. And if we take a look into the community, what other people say, so those of you who have attended our yesterday's presentation know this extract from Reddit, where there was a similar question asking why people hate Eclipse IDE, so even more provocative than I did it. And again, it's interesting to take a look at the answers. There are several things people complain about, but there are two things sticking out there. One is that people say that it's old, it looks old in some way, complaining about the UI. And another thing is that they say it's slow, so they complain about responsiveness, about performance problems when using the Eclipse IDE. So when taking a look at outdated look and feel, then it's interesting in particular to take a look at the Windows UI. This is how the Eclipse SDK looks on Windows 20 years ago and today. So you see that there is some progress, there is some modernization in the widgets that you see here and so on, but the overall look and feel, of course, is quite the same. So it's a quite usual thing that people complain that the UI can be considered rather outdated, which is because we still use an old API on Windows, which is more than 20 years old now, which is why these applications also rather look like 20-year-old Windows applications. So a second point is that people say that it's slow, or they even said it's horribly slow, and there is an example for that. Maybe some of you know that from our last year's EclipseCon presentation. Please don't be bored, but just have another look at this one. So it's about the outline view, or more precisely the quick outline view. So I think every one of you knows the outline view, showing you the members of a class, everything that is in there, maybe also the inherited ones, and you have a quick outline view, which is supposed to be quick. That's the one that you see if you press Ctrl-O, that opens up in your editor, showing everything in place in your editor, what is in that class. Now here we have a class inside our workspace of our RCP-based product, which with a huge class hierarchy. many complex inheritance relationships between them. And if I press Control O again here to also show the inherited members, then first of all you see nothing, even though many should appear. Then you see this this waiting marker. And now we could start waiting for this to be finished, but probably that would take the rest of this presentation. That's why I won't do that with you. So this is one of the performance, so this is a really extreme performance problem, of course, that we see here. Maybe you know some lag, some responsiveness problems, but this is a really severe one, where you have to wait for quite some time in our code base. This is a speed-up version. This is running up in minutes here. It's a video taken. So this is really annoying for our colleagues that do these things at the wrong places in our code base, in particular because you cannot abort this. You cannot just press escape and stop this process, but you have to kill your complete IDE, restart it, maybe rebuild your workspace. So this is really a killer in terms of productivity for all our colleagues. And in addition, it is really annoying, of course. Yeah? If you run into the situation, you have to stop your work for quite some time. In this case, it took around 40 minutes. Of course, it always depends on the current environment and the current situation, how long it actually takes. So, but at least one thing is good, is improved in the last years. As a fun fact, of course, the splash screen has improved for the last years. I think the current one is looking pretty good. But to be honest, of course, there is some more work going on, some more improvements to be made. So let's take a look into what's currently being done. Let's take a look into the future and also why Eclipse is still relevant in our opinion. And as I said, what chance we have in that. So this is an outlook for what comes this year. It's provided by people from SAP who are also here in this talk, fortunately. So we have seen the comparison between 20 years ago and today regarding the Windows UI, where there was not so much progress. Now we can here see a comparison between what we have actually even this year, at the beginning of this year, or in parts even now, compared to what we will have at the end of this year. And of course, it's not a dramatic change. It's only what happens within 1 year, but it's comparable to the progress that we've seen before in a far longer period of time. So what do we see here? In general, we see a modernized theming that is currently worked on. So on the left side here, you see what you're used to, having all these white backgrounds, for example, in all the areas. Now in the modernized, or in the updated, changed version, whatever you want to call it, you have this focus on the editor area with the white background and other areas more shaded in gray. But there is, of course, a more large-scale update to the overall theme, adapting also to what other IDEs and other tools are doing. You can also see here that the tab headers, like here, are simplified, not having all these icons in there, but you can reduce that to just have text in there, like also other tools do it. And you, in the middle here, also see a comparison or difference in this dialog that is popping up here for the find functionality. I will come to that in a minute. First to the theming that we see here. This is already available as preview in the previous release. So if you take the September release of Eclipse, you can update that, you can enable that as a preview feature, this new theme, and we hope that we can provide that soon as the default theme for the Eclipse IDE. So regarding this find dialog that you have seen here, on the left side we see the previous state that we had. So if you press Control F in your document to do an in-document search, for searching a string within your current editor, then you have this window dangling around, hiding parts of your editor, so you do not see the region in which you're searching, maybe. You have a whole bunch of functionality, rather unstructured here, and so this was quite annoying, in particular if you consider that you actually want to search within the actual editor, so doing something in there. How other tools do it and how we do it now is to integrate this functionality in the editor, have this overlay on the top right, where you only have search functionality now. You can extend that also to replace functionality, so only show that functionality that you need right now. And this is a small example for making user experience changes in general, to improve the overall user experience in the IDE that we currently do. And this is actually something that is available. So if you download the current Eclipse release from September, you will have this enabled by default. If you want, you can also switch back to the existing one. But this is something that you get now if you take the current Eclipse IDE version. And some other thing is, if you take a look at high DPI support, also an important topic today, if you have multiple monitors with different scale values for each of them, Then if you have a current Eclipse IDE, so it's on Windows, if you have a current Eclipse IDE and move it to another monitor with a different monitor scaling, it will become blurry. I hope you can see it here in the, on the Beamer image. What you actually would like to have and what you can do now is to have a sharp scaling so that your UI adapts to every monitor you move it to, like you're used to when having other modern applications, so that you always have a sharp scaling of your complete application. This is something that is now experimentally available, so if you want to, you can use the current version of the Eclipse IDE and activate that one. You need to define some startup flags, so it's not that easy to use, but in the next release we plan to make it experimentally available even via an ordinary preference, so you can check it out and test this feature and really have a better UI experience on modern high DPI environments. So far to the current improvements we're working on, to give you some impression of what is currently done to improve the experience with the IDE. And now let's take a look at who uses the IDE.
Yes, so there's a current study from this year looking at the Java developers and which primary IDE they are using, and there you can see that Eclipse still has more than 20% market share. And if you look even more closely, you can see that JDT has a bigger market share because VS Code, which is developed by Red Hat and Microsoft, internally also uses the Java Development Tools. So altogether, you can see, yeah, the good old IDE Eclipse still has quite some users, and JDT has almost half of the Java users nowadays. So it's still very relevant. And the Eclipse IDE is only the platform, the flagship of the platform. On top of the rich client platform, we have many interesting products. And of course, I can't show you all of them, but I will give you a slight impression of how big and how diverse they are. So it's widely adopted, the rich client platform. And one example is from Renesas. So what they have is a programming environment for microcontrollers that is used all over the world and has a lot of nice functionality. And it's something completely different than other tools like this one from SAP. So they are having their language workbench for their own programming language ABAP, based on Eclipse, and it's not all cloud, of course. They have other plugins for other IDEs, but this Eclipse RCP-based thing remains the key asset for them for ABAP development. And then again, another example from my company is Prevision. It's used for the electric and electronic design of vehicles, so it can deal with really huge models. And you can model your requirements, the 100 electronic control units that you have in a car, all the wiring, a lot of stuff with different tables and diagrams. And the most interesting thing about especially this product, but also other RCP-based products, it's when you're looking at time. So if you go out and buy a car tomorrow, you probably expect that in 10 or 15 years, your car will still receive some updates. So our customers that sell you the car tomorrow, what they expect is that in 10 or 15 years, they can still use our RCP-based tool to develop these updates that they will bring to you. So in this market, it's not like with smartphones that you may switch every second year. No, it's more about decades in such markets. And that's something very important for them. And so speaking about decades, let's just briefly look at the last 2 decades of the Eclipse IDE and RCP. It all started in 2001 with a consortium. And then in 2004, we had the Eclipse Foundation. I will talk about that later. And in the same year, Eclipse 3 was coming up with the, in this time, really exciting plugin mechanism. And the platform was the basis for a lot of RCP-based products that were developed in the following years. And then in 2013, we had Eclipse 4, which even further improved the extensibility. And in 2021, the Eclipse IDE Working Group was created. I will explain that one later too, if you don't know it yet. So, of course, you can see, like Heiko just said, yeah, there hasn't been so much changes to the UI, but if you're looking at our customers and at a lot of other customers for other RCP-based products, they see something that is really proven and stable. So Eclipse was future-proof for more than 20 years for them, and that's what some of them really are looking for. So if you're looking at the drivers for adoption of the rich client platform, yeah, that's one of the two drivers, the stability and the extensibility. But there are two more. So it's vendor neutral. That's really an important thing for many. We have the Eclipse Foundation, which is great for bringing all these companies together to collaborate, to help us with governance and legal stuff and so on. So you have a lot of different companies in that foundation, and you're not bound to a single vendor. Which brings me to the next point, that it's not only open source, but really open to contribute. So everybody, depending on the Eclipse IDE or RCP, isn't damned to be dependent on a single company that may or may not like your pull request. And no, it's a really strong community. And if you bring in something, you just saw some examples, and we'll be seeing some more. If you bring in a contribution, and if it's technically good, the community will be happy to have it. There are a lot of volunteers, and not only a single company that you depend on. So let's look a little bit closer in this community. You probably all know Jonah, who received the Lifetime Achievement Award last year, and I just quote him here, who said, yeah, we really have some progress in the last year on revitalizing the Eclipse IDE. The number of companies dramatically grow. There's a bunch of new peoples that came in the last 2-3 years. And he's really excited about that, and we're excited too. And the numbers basically tell you the same. So that's just the numbers for the platform project for the last year. And you see there's quite some commits happening. And which is even more interesting is when you're looking at the contributors. It's not only like 3, 4, 5 people. No, it's really a big community with a lot of people doing a fair share on the contributions. And that's great. That's exactly what a vital community should look like. So
now let's take a look at our experiences throughout the last year with making contributions to these projects, and why we consider this now a real chance and found this to be a real chance for us to be really involved into the development and the ability to do that. So we mentioned this ability to contribute to the project, which is really important for us to also address the things that we have problems with, that we complain about. First thing I would like to start with is a general statement on why you should contribute, and as an example here I have an HEISE article for the Eclipse release in March this year. So every 3 months we have an Eclipse release, and on HEISE an article is posted for this release, and in March I was scrolling through my bubble, and in the morning, and I saw this article, and then I read the subtitle, a refactoring function for Java, and I thought, okay, I know about that one because I was involved into that one. And that's not the interesting part, but this was done by students of mine. So I had some students when we started this work doing an internship at our company, and they developed this functionality, and we said, hey, it's cool, it's missing in the Eclipse IDE, maybe it's not the most interesting refactoring one. We contributed it back, we made some quality assurance, of course, and brought that into the IDE, and then it even came into this HEISE article for the IDE. And for my students, that was so great to see. They were doing their bachelor studies, and now they were in such an article showing that they made some contribution, and they were so motivated by this work, seeing that people are seeing their work and are valuing their work. So you see here that it's really easy to contribute something valuable and to be involved in this whole open source contribution process. So on a more abstract level, I would say, I, as a developer, when I do contributions to Eclipse, but to open source in general, so why should I do that? Why is this great? So first of all, you can improve your developer's life and productivity. It's the direct gain that you have. I can do changes today, make pull requests, and on the next day I get a better version of the Eclipse IDE with the improvements that I made. This is also something that is very easy, and you can, as I said, directly benefit from it at the next day, and to the point that it's easy, I will also come to in a minute. Then it's also fun, of course. I have to be honest, that's something very subjective if you consider this fun, but usually we're all software developers, so we like to improve software, so usually it will be fun to make such contributions. And one great thing is that you gain visibility. If we're working for companies doing some proprietary products, of course you're working in that company, no one is really seeing what you're doing. Open source gives you the chance to do that, to gain visibility, to make other people see what you're doing and working on. And then at the fifth point here, the last one, it's probably the most important for me, that you really learn from others, from really experienced developers, and in particular from people being outside of your bubble. They have a different mindset, so in your company people see things in a similar way, they are used to each other. If you're working in such a context like Eclipse, you have so many different people with different mindsets, opinions. It's so valuable to see all these different things and to really improve your way of thinking with that. So that's really the most important point for me in doing this work. But it's not only great for me as a developer, but also for the company I'm working for to support this process.
Yeah, so from a company or manager's perspective, a nice thing is that you can improve directly the libraries that you depend on and make your product and the product of others better, and you benefit from their changes to these libraries. When the performance and the efficiency of your developers is increased and they are more visible, they are more motivated, that's good for you too. And your developers can learn on an individual level from the others, but even you or your company as an organization can learn from the other companies. How are they managing their contributions? How do they cope with this and that? And that's really something interesting. And here again, the last point is the most important. You can share costs. So whatever everybody of you needs, or a lot of you needs, you can pay together and you can focus on the stuff that is unique to your product.
Okay, so now let's take a look into very concrete contributions that we made and how they improved my life, our lives at Vector in our development of our product. First is a rather simple scenario, I would say. So the topic is about navigation within large Java files. So what you see here is an ordinary Java editor with a quite large source code file. I think it's more than 10,000 lines of code because it's generated code from a large meta model in our code base. And if you then click around in the outline view to navigate to other methods, I hope you can at least guess it here, that it takes quite some time. So it takes several seconds usually to navigate to these methods. So that's really annoying as a developer if you want to do things, to navigate to things, read the code, if it takes so long to make this navigation. We took a look at this. We found that the problem was in the annotation model, which keeps track of the selections within files and some other things. And we fastened this update because there was some work being done which was completely unnecessary. And then we found that it becomes much faster. So if you now click around, it goes almost instant. It's not completely instant because you still have a file of 10,000 lines of code. So it will take some milliseconds, but now it's perfectly usable. And this is of course, a great gain because it's far less annoying now to use the navigation within the editor.
And we have a second example where we originally only focused on fastening the shutdown of our product. And we removed some unnecessary functionality. And fortunately, we removed them at the right place upstream in Eclipse. And we realized, not only shutdown was faster, startup got faster too. But that was not the best thing. The real interesting thing was that once we were using the updated Eclipse, we realized that, hey, some of our automated performance tests only take like half of the time now. What happened there? And we looked closer and realized that, yeah, our fancy model switching mechanism, you remember our tool is able to deal with millions of model elements. We can switch model parts, and there we used the same stuff from Eclipse before, and now it wasn't there anymore, so this one got faster too. So the interesting thing here is there are really situations where you get benefits that you didn't expect before if you fix things not only in your product, but where you should fix them upstream.
Right, so let's take a look again at what our quick outline view is doing, whether it quickly opened meanwhile. So, okay, now we see it has opened in between, it has been done. Today it took less than 30 minutes. Interestingly, it always takes less than 30 minutes when I do this presentation, but actually if I tried to take this video, it always took more than 45 minutes or around 45 minutes. Please believe me. But of course, we have taken a look at this. We found the reasons for this problem and provided a fix. So if I now in this IDE having a fixed version, open the quick outline view, press Ctrl O 2 times, it is almost instant. So unfortunately, we have not contributed this back because we still have to make some final architectural design improvements to properly contribute it back to Eclipse, but we will of course do that so that then everyone can profit from this nice performance improvement, because of course that's really important for our developers to not wait 45 minutes when doing the wrong, when using the wrong shortcuts. So you've seen that we made some contributions. Of course, we made many more contributions in the last year, but to be honest, it was not that easy in the beginning. I'm not sure who of you has made contributions in the recent time or maybe before. So if you tried that some years ago, it was quite a cumbersome task because there were so many sources of information, outdated, redundant, hard to find. So it took me really some time to find out what I should do first. At some point in time, I decided, well, let's try it now. I hope I have the information. I made my first pull request and got a lot of red X signs because validations were not working properly. Some tests were failing, so this is just a symbolic picture. There were many more tests failing when I did my first pull request, even though I only changed some Javadoc. So of course, this was really annoying again. I could have given up. Obviously, I proceeded with that. And in general, so this was my first impression last year, but we made this far easier. So even before I started doing that, there was a migration to GitHub, replacing some of the previous tooling, which was more cumbersome to use at least. So this is a real great point that was done. Then in the last year, this whole onboarding information that was hard to look into first was consolidated. You have one place now where you find all the information. We also improved the validation, in this case for the Eclipse platform, so that in many cases now if you make a pull request and you only change Javadoc and do not make anything not working anymore, it also works fine. And recently, we also gained some support in terms of our community mentors, Hannes and Olivier, who are both here, who even further support this work to make it even easier for you all, for all the contributors to make contributions to these projects. And as an example, what this means to make such a contribution in an easy way, taking a look at this fix that I've shown you, this navigation thing, clicking around in the outline view. If we take a look at what we did there, so I started to take a look into this. It took me about half a day to make this fix, but this includes all the testing with our own workspace, so integrating that in our own IDE deployment and testing it there. So if you just do it in your development environment, it would have been much faster, within 1 or 2 hours, I would say. I submitted it next day, and then after, I think, 1.5 weeks, it was merged without further improvements required, so I had just 1.5 weeks to wait until it was in. And in particular, in this project, it was in the Java Development Tools. I'm not a committer or anything, so I have no chance to bring the code in myself, so I had to wait for someone to take over and take a look at this one, and fortunately someone did and brought it into the code base, so now we're able to use it in our IDE. So this is representative for all the contributions that we usually make, that things are processed quite quickly and that you can really make changes and improve the things that annoy you or that are problems for you. So far to the contributions, to how easy it is. Now let's take a final look at how all these things are organized in the overall contribution and development process.
Yeah, so you remember the keynote from Sarah Novotny yesterday, and she mentioned an XKCD comic, but she didn't show it. I show it to you. Why do I show it to you? Because please really relate it to the Eclipse IDE and don't take it as a joke. So most of you guys here don't need to hear it, but probably your colleagues when you come back from OCX, or perhaps your boss or the people in your company deciding on budgets and where to send people, what to do. You should show this comic to them, and you should also show them one number. So if that Nebraska guy, for whatever reason, stops developing that Eclipse IDE or Eclipse platform project, it's really expensive to do his work again, because there's a study that found out that if companies would not have open source software, they would have to spend 3.5 times the money they actually spend on software. So although your boss or the people deciding on budget may think, it's cheaper to just wait on somebody else who will look at these Eclipse IDE projects. We just use them, we are just happy with them, or we're doing 2, 3-ish contributions. If too many people do this, if too many people are waiting for those Nebraska guys, it can be really expensive in the end. So if you have some people to talk about, tell them that, because it's the perfect moment at the right now, because we gained some momentum with the working group. And what is this working group? I just said it started 3 years ago, and Jonah was excited about it. We're excited about it because there are really a lot of companies involved now, and we have a great program manager, Thomas Froment, who's always happy to answer your questions when you want to be part of the working group. And you see there's really a lot of companies that joined in the last years, and we have some quarterly on-site meetings, we have some regular hackathons, and you're welcome to see the videos or just contact us. And if you're talking to your colleagues or boss, you can say, we reserved some space for you. There could be your logo if it's not in there. And if you want to convince them, just think about the arguments again. You can improve the product, increase the performance, gain visibility, cooperate, and finally share costs.
Yeah, and it's really great to have the IDE working group to support this work, to bring together all the people, to also be able to address some of the things that you could not do as a single company, because you need to work together on that. So that's really why it is great to have the working group combining these efforts. But finally, everything is about the community, right? So it's about a community project. All the things that we can use are developed by either volunteers or at least people that are paid by the companies, like the ones in the working group, or by people that are paid by the working group. So it's at least driven by people like these here. So these are the committers and the project leads of the platform project, just as a representative of all the Eclipse projects that are, of course, driven by the communities and the people working on these projects. So what should you take away from today's presentation? We have 3 things. One is that Eclipse still has a high number of users. We mentioned that it has still a significant number and significant USPs in general. It's the only free and independent ecosystem and IDE together that you can use and you can really benefit from, and many of us do by basing their products on top of it. We know that Eclipse has quite some demand for modernization, considering UI UX, the architecture. Yesterday we had some discussions about Eclipse SWT modernization, so we know that there is some demand that needs to be addressed. But probably the most important part to take away is, of course, the contributing part, seeing that this is easy, that it's great, that you can develop yourself and experience what it brings to you, both as a developer, but also as a company. And thank you for your attention, and let's keep working on the Eclipse IDE. Thanks. Okay. So if you have any questions or comments, I think we at least have 1 minute left, so for 1 or 2 questions there would be time.
Or remarks.
All right, then. Thank you, and see you at the conference.